it was announced today that Kane is going into the Hall of Fame. Undertaker broke the news to him on the bump. I mean, Kane, what a career he's had. You know, he had two failed gimmicks, first in WWF with Isaac Yankem, then the fake Diesel, and then he
Yeah.
became Kane, and he's been this iconic character for over 20 years. I mean, talk about somebody who deserves to go in the Hall of Fame. It feels like Kane is a no-brainer, and when you kind of look at all the stuff that he did over the years and how he was still able to kind of keep himself relevant at various points, being around so long, is a testament to the guy, I think. What do you think about Kane going in?
Kane, absolutely. I mean, it was such a struggle for him to become a star in wrestling. Obviously, he was famously the Christmas creature, wasn't he? Memphis
Mm-hmm.
was just like a gimmick that if you haven't seen it, you need to check that out. It's just unbelievable, really. And Isaac Yankem was just so awful in 1995, and the fake Diesel later that year, sorry, in 1996, was just doomed from the off. And somehow he was able to come back from that. Obviously, with the Kane character, and at first people didn't know that it was Glenn Jacobs, the guy who had these two failed gimmicks previously. So I think that really did help him at the beginning, and actually helped him probably until he was established. Probably, I guess, late 98, you would say that the character was there for keeps. That was my fear with Kane when we first met him at the Bad Blood pay-per-view when he came out at the end of the Hell in a Cell match between The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. The fear, that's the Christmas creature. I mean, the fear was that this was going to be a character that would be defeated handily by The Undertaker at WrestleMania, and then that would be it. And he would just disappear, and this would be, another gimmick for the character graveyard. And instead, and I think we've got to give Vince Russo some credit here, Kenny. I mean, he was a big part of the writing process of that Kane and The Undertaker feud, and it was zany at times, and it incorporated elements that we'd never seen before in pro wrestling. Even in Kevin Sullivan's Army of Darkness phase down in Championship Wrestling from Florida, which was, I think, really an influence on The Undertaker and Kane. A lot of the things that happened in the late 90s, we'd never seen anything like what happened between Kane and The Undertaker. I mean, they broke new ground in WWF. I think that's fair to say, isn't it, Kenny?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like you say, because Undertaker had always had these opponents who would come in, they would do a program with them, and then they were kind of done. So the fact
Yeah.
that, the writing was able to make, because Kane coming in as Undertaker's brother, that's a really high level for you to
Yeah.
be, okay, so you're the Undertaker's brother. And the writing in that kind of year from late 97 to late 98 really did a good job of kind of making him feel like Undertaker's equal, which when you think about it is kind of amazing that they were able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, the maintained interest even after Undertaker defeated Kane at WrestleMania 14. At that point, there was a fear of, well, are they going to have a rematch? And if Undertaker wins again, will that be it for Kane? And will he slide down the card and then disappear in a couple of months? And instead, they actually maintained that story. And, Kane ended up defeating Steve Austin for the WWF title, King of the Ring that year. I mean, he only held the belt for one night, of course. But I mean, that was a huge endorsement of what the company thought of him, that even after he'd lost to The Undertaker, he was booked in a pay-per-view main event, what was that, 3 months later, and became champ, and was involved with Austin and all the big programs. And yeah, I mean, I think we've really got to give some credit here to the people who were writing this crazy stuff during that era for maintaining the stardom of Kane, and also maintaining interest in a program which, had that happened 3 years earlier, I think that would have been Kane's fate. I think he would have just slipped down the card and would have just disappeared by the end of the year. But instead, they managed to keep the thing going with all sorts of crazy plot lines and tangents and turns and characters and gimmick matches. Like, obviously we had the Inferno match, didn't we, after WrestleMania? I mean, it wasn't really much of a match, but in many ways it was one of those sort of triumphs of WWF's marketing machine at the time, more like a spectacle rather than a match. I remember running a photo from that match on the front cover of, I think it was issue 47 of Power Slam. And that was a good seller. And people were like, wow, what an amazing cover that was. Because WWF had never done anything like that before. And it looked great, at least in stills. It wasn't that entertaining to watch. But I mean, Kane to me is a guy who's had tremendous longevity. He's still viewed as a star, and was a guy who, unlike say DX, who were DX were washed up by mid 2000, autumn 2000.
I mean, you're being very kind, but yeah, maybe. I mean,
Yeah.
they got back together late '99, but they weren't really DX. It was more Triple H's crew. So I mean, really, you're talking like spring of '99. They were kind of past their peak.
Yeah, I mean, they were still going and they were still trying to squeeze some more mileage out of the act. But you look at that for an Attitude Era act that was incredibly popular in 1998, and they didn't stand the test of time, but Kane somehow did.